All right. Welcome everybody to our May Think Agile Neighborhood event. Tonight, it's going to be a very exciting one. SAFe updated its version to 5.1 and to explore how the latest updates support business agility, which is key in navigating the ever-increasing changes we have today. We have our guest, Alhad Akole. Before I introduce Alhad, just a few logistics. If I can ask everyone to keep their mics on mute. Alhad is open to taking questions during his talk. You can just raise your hand and Taryn and I will notify him that there's a question. You can also add your questions on the chat and your comments. Feel free to do that. And we will also have a Q&A session after his talk. So back to our lovely guest, Alhad is a firm believer of Agile as a culture. He's on a journey towards being a better coach each day and exploring the human side of people, including himself. And he absolutely loves spending time with his daughter. They love to do arts and crafts together. They love also baking cakes and coming up with these lovely new designs. And his wife, his lovely wife, also joins them when they're baking cakes. But today, Alhad is not here to teach us about how to bake lovely cakes. He's here to tell us what is new in SAFe 5.1. So over to you, Alhad. Please, everyone, give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Squeezy, and thank you, Think Agile, for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. How are you all doing? Hope everyone is having good
There's
week.
an emoji there.
And I'm hoping you're just waiting for Friday to come. Okay, so today I'm here to share a few insights around SAFe 5.1, what has evolved over a period of time, and just trying to understand how does it really help us and makes that particular SAFe framework as very special one compared to other few of the scaling frameworks which are there, right? So that's where we are going to kind of explore together. So feel free to chime in, ask some questions and share some insights as well. I think that will help. And it's much more like a conversation which I would like to have rather than one-sided talk. Okay, so feel free to jump in. So 5.1, I think, as you all know, that was launched last year, but there was a few minor updates which happened early this year, which were launched in February 2021. So what does that look like, right? So before we jump there, let's look at the small history of SAFe, where it started with. It started in 2011. Dean started with his SAFe 1.0 as a framework, taking a lot of insights from lean product development, agile development, Devops, system thinking. Building on top of it, in between we saw like LSE coming up, like lean software engineering. That name didn't catch up well, and that's where they started with 4.0, 4.5, and so on and so forth, right? So last year it was 5.0, and early this year it's much more like looking at the business agility. What are the different aspects which are there in any enterprise, any organizations, which they need to support to understand and to deliver to customer needs. So that's where they have made a lot of insights. They have made a lot of changes based on the insights which are coming from the real people, real enterprises which are implementing and adopting SAFe. Many people will say, okay, SAFe is not agile. But again, there are flavors to it. My personal feeling is it depends on people who are adopting SAFe and who are implementing agile as well, right? So even we have seen agile failing in their basic terms, even we have seen SAFe failing in their own terms because of the people which are kind of trying to implement it in a wrong way. So there is always a balance between what are the people which are supporting versus what happens in the ground as well. So 5.0, it was for lean enterprises, wherein we want to understand. It's one of the leading frameworks. We see it's for business agility. It supports a lot of integration of lean, DevOps, comprehensive systems engineering, which has been taken into consideration. And it supports a lot of digital deliveries which are happening, or the deliveries which are supporting the digital era as of now. So if you think about it, most of the solutions, the systems which we are developing, they are not standalone applications. Those are not standalone systems. They very much interact with a lot of your underlying hardware, software, the firmware part of it. If you think about it, a lot of systems are nowadays integrated with your artificial intelligence. Drones are coming into picture. You got systems which are being monitored and guided by your softwares, like Tesla, if I take an example of it. It's not a car, it's kind of a software hub which is there, right? Because on the fly, you get your Tesla car being updated, your software getting updated. So most of your organizations and most of the products nowadays are getting impacted and being driven by your software. So everything is becoming kind of a software business, and no one is like outside of this umbrella, right? So that's why we need to think about how do we support that software development using your lean thinking, making sure that we understand what are the different value streams which are there, because it's ultimately the value streams through which your customers are interacting with your enterprise and organizations. So to have that interaction, what your customer needs is much more faster service delivery, having predictability, because unless there is a predictability of the service, of the interactions which are there, they won't be coming back to you. So we need to have that predictability. And along with that one, there has to be a big high quality which needs to be built in, the stricter quality standards which needs to be there. We saw in the recent times, there has been big failures like Airbus and few other failures which happen. So what has been the reasons behind it, right? It can be like small reason like sensors going wrong because that was mounted under the engine. So was the testing done enough in that 737 kind of a case versus what software engineers can do, what the thinking has to be there. So we need to think these different aspects, looking around from the system thinking perspective. So that's where this framework comes very solid in that particular case, wherein it gives that different lenses to it. We call it like different competencies which needs to be there in the SAFe framework. And I think many of you who are working in the SAFe, maybe you are aware there are different competencies in the SAFe framework. These are on the left-hand side, like organizational agility, lean portfolio management, enterprise solution delivery, likewise, along with your lean agile leadership teams. So that's what these different competencies needs to be built within the organization to support the elements which are really required from your customer perspective. So SAFe 5.1, that's the new framework or the new changes which have been launched. If you look at the framework, it doesn't look like, okay, there is a big change there. But if you look minutely, there are few major changes which are being done there. So we'll look into those changes at high level initially, and then we'll deep dive into a few of them just to get an idea around, okay, what is happening there. Definitely, there is a lot of content behind it. We won't be able to cover it within 1 hour here. But yeah, let's deep dive. Let's see what is the things which are there. So major change which you see is definitely 5.1. That's the latest level. Along with that one, there is a good space which has been created to incorporate the key elements which are there. So very first thing which you will notice is previously there was a value streams which were identified at the portfolio level, but there was a lot of confusion which was happening around what is that value stream? Is it a real operational value stream or is it a development value stream? What kind of value stream it is, right? And generally most of the organizations work on the operational value streams. And the teams which are working on the IT side of it or hardware, firmware part of it, they will generally work on the development because that's where they will do design, development, and testing part of it. So they made very clear distinction on the framework, talking around that operational agility or the operational value streams will bring in the business agility. That's where that icon has been moved on the top of the framework. Along with that one, we got development value streams, which are pretty clearly defined there. Right, so that gives clear distinction that that's the development team. That's where I need to focus more from IT team, more from the development team perspective. The next change which you will see at the portfolio level is The framework is driven from the MVP kind of approach, wherein they take few of the learnings from the industry. They see how these learnings can be incorporated into the big framework and which can be then scaled across multiple organizations and industries. So previously, participatory budgeting was one of the topic which was there. They experimented with it and they found it is much more valuable to include it on the framework. And that's where you'll see that icon coming here, which talks around participatory budgeting. Again, it's a one way of getting your funding for your value streams. So as you know, in SAFE framework, they don't recommend to have the funding at the project level. Rather, they have moved that funding to a portfolio level because that's where they want to fund the value streams, take out the lot of generally delays which happens in terms of getting funding, allocating that fund, getting the people onboarded, so on and so forth. Along with that one, they are making sure that all these value streams works to some certain solutions, and these solutions could be bigger in the context depending on how big is that organization and the portfolios underlying to it, and the value streams definitely. So that's the biggest change which is brought in. So participatory budgeting is definitely there. People are adopting it. It's much more collaborative process of getting the funds there based on what is happening underlying to your teams as well. The next big change which they have made is they have made the clutter, they have cleared out the clutter from the team area, the essential part of it. So previously there has been a lot of confusion around whether it's continuous exploration, integration, and deployment. Is it a sequential activity within the release trains? Because the symbol didn't indicate anything, rather it said, okay, it is happening towards the end maybe. And that was the confusion. To clear that one, what they have brought in is they have made the PI boundaries much more leaner, right? The yellow color lines. Along with that one, they have brought in the CE, CI, and CD as a infinity loops within each of the iterations here. So making it clear that these are like continuous activity, not once-off activity which happens. Along with that one, they have made clear that release on demand can happen anytime. It shouldn't be like a boundary or towards the boundary of your PI or maybe your iteration. It can even happen when you are executing your iterations, right? So whenever that feature is ready, can it be deployed? Can it be released to your market? So that's where your symbols have been brought in at the team level here, which says these different packages can be released anytime if you got good capability of release on demand. So for that one, there is a good insight and focus being paid to your DevOps part of it. But nowadays, they are not calling DevOps, rather they are calling DevOps with security. So DevSecOps. Why it is so? Because many of the systems are now getting connected with each other. There is a lot of traffic which happens over the internet. There is a lot of security issues which can be there. We have seen like banks getting hijacked for your internet and a few other things. So for that one, we need to have security in place. It shouldn't be built as a part and parcel of your development activities. So that's where you will see a lot of focus being there on the DevOps and security aspect of it. Okay, I'm just checking if any questions are coming through. Okay, not yet. Okay, the next change which is there is they're not distinguishing different teams as separate teams. Rather, they are saying it's a business team or technology team which can be there. Sorry, I'm just getting that pointer right here. So you're seeing here the business teams appearing on this particular screen, business and just the technology. There is no distinction between DevOps and support team. So we need to consider them as one team, because what we say is we need to organize always around with value. And that's one of the principles, right, which is there on the SAFE framework. The 10th principle, organizing around value. And why this is there is, since APD, which is your Agile Product Delivery, is the key core concept and competency which is really required for teams to develop on cadence, release on demand. So what they need is a lot of insight, a lot of interaction with the business teams along with the technology team. So that's the main thing which they have brought in. So without having a lot of distinction there, that's the one wherein we need to focus on. Along with that one, there is a good focus on design thinking aspect of it. That's where you see the picture, design thinking, customer centricity, which comes in identifying the needs of the users, trying to understand their journeys, trying to then convert those journeys into your development value streams, and then subsequently looking around and seeing what are the things which we can really deliver to address their needs. Along with that one, there has been small changes around, which talks around PI boundaries are like less highlighted here. Rather, PI has been taken down here to indicate it's a PI boundary. The space has been created using SPC. Again, just a minute visual changes there, but yeah, much more powerful when we look at from the team perspective or at the essential level. And the program increment has been kind of taken out. Rather, they are just calling it PI because we need to just move the focus away from program to more of a PI part of it, right? So having less context of the program and rather more context of the increments which should happen within the PI boundaries. So let's look at few of the main changes which are done. So before that, any questions, any comments which are coming from anyone?
No comments and questions at this point.
Okay. Cool. So few changes which are there are related to your operational value streams here. So previously there was no good guidance which was available in terms of what are the different value streams which could be there, because every organization industry could be different. So they have given some guidance around it saying, okay, it can be a fulfillment related operational value streams wherein customers are coming to your enterprise trying to get some value out of the services and the products which are being offered. So for example, like loan, which is required from your customer, how it goes through, like attract the customer, maybe a quick quote, complete the application till he closes the loan. So that can be one of the fulfillment related operational value stream. The second one could be related to manufacturing, because a lot of your products nowadays has got a component wherein it goes through the manufacturing process as well. So it can be like order is received and you start manufacturing those components, those parts, which can be used and can be shipped across, right? So that will be your one of the manufacturing operational value stream. The next one is around your software products, because few of the products like SaaS, ERP, cloud-based applications like Salesforce, these are much more like off-the-shelf products which are available, but still they need to undergo certain changes to make sure that it works in the customer environment and it addresses the needs. So for that one, again, there is another value stream which can be there, which is around your software product operational value stream. So basically creating an interest, making sure that it goes through the sales cycle, making sure that we are provisioning for customer needs, trying to understand we either have got cloud-based licensing part of it. These products are being configured and they start using for it. So that's where the renewal part comes into picture. It's a subscription-based products which can be there. And the last one is around your supporting operational value streams. So these are nothing but the internal organizations, internal silos, which might be there within your organization, which actually supports your bigger value streams. For example, in this particular slide, we are looking at audit function, which might be there. So annual audit happening throughout the organizations, wherein they look at the financials, they engage with the auditors, making sure that they audit, they find the issues which might be there, fix those issues, and then re-audit and make sure that audit can be signed off by the external boards and external entities. So it's much more like a supporting function which can happen. So these are the four main categories which they have looked at, coming from different real case studies which are there, and giving that guidance, right? Because then people can think about it saying, okay, where do I really fit into, right? Of course, there will be a technique which we generally use when we look at the implementation roadmap, wherein we go through understanding the customer journey, understanding the operational value stream, and breaking that into your development value stream as well. So definitely it helps us to think in a different way, looking at what are the touch points which are there, what are the trigger points which are there. So again, just giving some details here on those four value streams, or breaking down those operational value streams into your development value streams. So what you see here is that lone one, the first one which we looked around, like digitally enabled products and the services pattern. So for each of those steps which are represented by value stream, there could be underlying systems which are there, which are represented by yellow color boxes there. And these systems are then supported by your different development teams. Okay, so that can be one of the approach, one of the way of breaking it down to the development value stream. Another could be you got manufacturing pattern. Definitely, it goes through the lot of regulatory requirements. We need to understand what is the traceability, and that's where your solution intent will be there. And then you can have a bigger value stream, development value stream, which is around developing the specifications needed, manufacturing to validate the vehicle. So it's much more like MBSC kind of approach, wherein they prototype, making sure it works. And then you actually start building those vehicles, those components using the actual manufacturing plants. So that's where you might have another value stream, development value stream, actually building those products. So different development value streams which can be there. You got software products, again, the similar pattern, which are the different underlying systems which can be there, like customer portal, maybe a CRM, provisioning, help desk kind of a scenario. And you might have the teams which are supporting to it. And there could be a team which is actually onboarding and making sure that the products are on the cloud, those are supported. And those can also be scaled using different touch points, which might be there, APIs, which might be there. And then you got operational value stream pattern can be supporting functions like ERP systems and a few others. So those working across these multiple teams, getting those insights and making sure they work as one development value streams. And to support that, they're thinking of, there could be multiple ways in which those can be supported using your team construct. So they have come up with, or they're heavily reliant now on team topologies. That's a new addition right now, which talks around previously, if you remember, if you have seen the framework, if you remember, we had only two kind of teams generally, like feature teams and the component team. That's what we talked about in the previous versions. But now we are talking here are four main teams. First team is stream aligned teams. Definitely, that's very much aligned to your feature teams, wherein they work across the flow of the work, making sure that they got ability of design, develop, and testing, making sure end-to-end development happens there, and the release also happens. But that is not the case. It's not that simple products across the industry. So there could be like multiple complicated teams which can be there, subsystems which are there. So we need to have some specialized team members which are working for it. So those teams can be like very niche skill team members like mainframes, or maybe ERP team, ERP system related team members, right? So those are the ones which are like specialized skills and expertise which can be there. So that can be one of the team within your release train construct. Another could be platform team, because a lot of times we need to build those platforms, those underlying main systems before the business functionality can be developed on top of it. So you will have those platform teams. Maybe in few cases, it can be building that cloud systems across the organization, the cloud infrastructure, and then onboarding the actual applications on top of it, or migrating those to the cloud platform. So supporting all those elements will be your maybe your platform team. And there could be enabling team as well. Basically, what they do is they support the different either streams, stream aligned teams, complicated teams, or the platform teams as well. But again, they work on some new technology, making sure that they build those roadmaps, they build those architecture runways, and then they kind of hand over it to the other teams which they can support it. So that way there can be different configurations of it depending on how you really look at your operational value streams and development value streams. So some topologies which can look like in the real terms. Stream aligned teams, generally best configuration will be to have these kind of teams here. Sorry about that. Yeah, so stream aligned teams having or working on your products, solutions or services part of it, maybe features, value streamlets which can be there. maybe new product innovation related aspects, which they can be then aligned towards the stream align. And then there could be complicated system teams and the platform teams. I think that's where the construct looks like. And if you think about solution train, the multiple trains underlying can be your stream aligned trains, or those can be like complicated system teams, a subsystem team represented by art, or those can be your platform arts as well. Like they build the platforms and then hand over to kind of like give it to the stream aligned teams to manage it further and start consuming it. So that way that configuration will keep changing depending on what is your maturity of your journey looks like and how you're changing in terms of your products and the life cycle of your products underlying to those development value streams. This is a very new concept. I think very new, but at the same time, very interesting and kind of very much bought in by different organizations. Here, what we say is instead of giving budgets to your projects, the underlying teams to it, rather move that budget at a portfolio level and rather fund the value streams which are there, because that's where the maximum value is there. And then we can do away with a lot of red taping which happens in the organization. So it's like much more like a lean portfolio management function which comes into picture here, and they generally drive this participatory budgeting within the enterprise. So what happens here is you come up with set of budget which is there, and looking at your current budget which can be there or which was there, getting the current business context, the roadmaps, the strategic themes into consideration. Are there any changes? Are there any roadmap changes? What is the total portfolio budget and guardrails will look like? So again, there is some guidance around how the guardrails needs to be formed and what consideration needs to be taken there. Few of them are related to your capacity. Few of them are related to what is your lean startup cycle looks like, and some guardrails around it, like budgeting process, portfolio governance aspects of it, the collaboration between different participants in the process, which are your business owners, product owners, product management team, enterprise architect teams, along with few other stakeholders which are there. And then what we do is, depending on those aspects, we think about what is really required to run the business as well as to grow the business, like looking around into the horizon, into the future, and trying to understand where I should be investing my money on, right? And taking all those insights into, what we do is we invite stakeholders from different portfolios, different development value streams. And what they do is they look at the epic which are there on the portfolio level, which then is generally captured as a part of your lean business case. And they all sit together, they get the equal amount of your budget. So I'm just getting, yeah, so the budget which is identified here, just for example, is 40 million is the budget which is identified. And if you got 8 members on the table, everyone gets 5 million as their money. Sorry about the handwriting there. And what they do is, based on the budget which is available to each of the person, they will look at the business cases which are there, which are represented by your epics, and they will try to put their money on the business cases which makes sense from an overall enterprise perspective, where is the maximum value delivery is going to happen. So that way they start putting that money into those different epic buckets. And then whatever is the epic which gets the maximum budget fully allocated, that epic starts implementing first based on the priority of it. So that way it becomes much more valuable exercise for your enterprise, because we get different perspective from different stakeholders. They will say, okay, this might be of interest to me, rather than my own portfolio, which might be very close to my heart, right? Because I'm seeing a value from a different perspective now. And that way it becomes a useful exercise to say, okay, if it is something which is funded fully, which is the value stream which can deliver that particular epic? So we need to then think about and say about how do we make our value streams much more cross-functional, so that any epic which is selected at this particular process, how that can be delivered in a faster way by the most efficient team in that particular sense. So same steps have been broken down here. So basically what we say is prepare for the content, making sure that we assemble the participants from different areas. Those can be business owners, epic owners, your solution architect, product solution management teams. They come together with the help of LPM team, APMO teams, which are there, which will be there within the enterprise. They will distribute the budget accordingly based on the business cases which are there. And then they will say, okay, while analyzing the results, which are the one which is making sense to me. So the portion which you see on the top is something which is fully funded, like everybody is trying to invest in that particular epic. So it's like a fish tank, sorry, the Shark Tank kind of a series which comes in, wherein investor comes in. I mean, the person who is going to start the business, he comes in and pitches the idea, and then your participant generally says, okay, how much money they are able to invest in that particular idea, right? It's the same thing. You got some ideas captured as epics, and then these are the participants which are trying to invest in that idea. So whatever is fully funded, this basically that goes for your implementation as phases, or the next phase in your portfolio Kanban. Okay. The next aspect is around your DevOps, including your security part of it. So as I said, there are a lot of systems which are getting integrated, and those are like getting exposed to your external internet, external environment from a product perspective. We need to think about what are the different elements which we can bring in from the security aspects. And the security needs to be then built every iteration by iteration, every PI. That way it's not a once-off activity, rather it can be continuously built compliance within your systems. So for that one, what we are looking at is new pages, guidance around DevOps as well as DevOps SecOps, which will then enable the continuous delivery pipeline. So that's where that main importance is coming through. And then there are different elements which have been taken care into your DevOps health radar. So right from continuous exploration, integration, deployment, what do you see on the outer green circle here? And the release on demand. And there are different activities which happens under each of them. So for each of those activities, what are the different considerations as an organization which we need to put through, and then pay attention to it so that we can then improve and then mature on those practices and those activities. Business and technology, that's the next change which they have brought in. They don't want to make any distinction between business, IT, development team, support team. Rather, it's a business and IT teams coming together as one team and delivering that value to your end users. So in the business, it can be like actual business teams along with your HR teams, marketing, maybe even contracting can be a part of it, legal teams, making sure that there is a compliance team also there. So many more teams can be part of it. And then on technology side, it's mainly the hardware, the firmware, the software kind of teams, which will support that business functionality, implement it, and roll it out on in the market. So here what we are saying is we need to be agile, know your value stream. So that's the kind of maturing step as we go along in the journey. And this is a continuous activity which keeps happening within the organization. So it shouldn't be a once-off activity like you have identified operational value stream and development value stream. Rather, at a regular interval, see whether that value stream is a correct one. Are we facing any challenges, right? Your inspect and adopt workshops will actually help you to see whether that is really working for you or no, and what is the change which is required. So generally what I have seen working is whenever you identify a lot of dependencies into the PI planning and you struggle with them, I think that's a good point wherein you can revisit your value streams and say, okay, why there are so many dependencies outside? What is that we can do it differently? How do we can reorganize, make shuffle around the teams so that they're aligned towards the value and be specialized, right? That's where we can then reduce the overall cycle time. And then what we are saying is specialize in few different practices like HR, marketing, because those are the teams generally are seeing playing their roles after fact rather than being part of the journey. So how do we bring in together all those teams in the journey? And why it is so? Because if you think about it, traditionally we were thinking maybe only IT companies are part of the curve, like as innovators. But now Tesla, SpaceX, and other organizations which are very much into your manufacturing as well as software integration, they are playing major role in that space. Like SpaceX, what they do is they actually build all their spacecrafts using agile frameworks or the agile mindset. So they built as a prototype, they have got largest 3D printer in the world and the most costliest one, wherein they build their components, they test it, and they see how it is going to work, and then they actually manufacture it. And many other organizations also, like Apple and few other, they are also kind of trying to bring in the manufacturing within their own space rather than outsourcing it, so that they can reduce much of their cycle time as well. So that way it is happening. So there's a big shift which is happening. So that's where we need to think about how do we get that business agility using a lot of principles, a lot of competencies which are there, which are built into the SAFe framework, and how do we be better at it? So these are the major changes which are brought in into the framework. I think I have done a lot of talking here. So let's see what is the feedback coming from participants. Any aha moments or maybe any surprising moments for you?
Are there any questions for Alhad or any comments?
If not, maybe I will ask few questions then to have that conversation. So if you're implementing, are you anyone on the call who are implementing SAFe or working in that direction? How is it looking like for you? Okay. Looks like new territory for a few of them.
Sorry, I've actually got a question.
Yep.
Just in terms of that participatory, the participatory budgets, have you come across anybody in South Africa who's actually doing that successfully right now? Most companies I'm working with that have adopted SAFe they haven't even got funding value streams, right, let alone anything else, right? So it's, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so based on my few connects and the place where I'm working with, we are kind of forming LPM function. We are very much actively looking at participatory budgeting. Value stream function is happening. Of course, it's a big organization where I'm working. So it's like value streams are getting identified across the organization. So it's a big change which is happening. Whether it's ideal may not be as of now, because it's a continuous activity which will happen. But in specific area wherein I'm working, we are looking at having this participatory budgeting in near future. So we are preparing for it. There is a lot of good buy-in which has happened in the current times, recent times, wherein they are looking at, okay, there are like 4 levels of approval which needs to happen right now in the current context before you get a budget. So there is a good understanding of what should happen next. And those stakeholders, divisional executives are coming together to see how we can have this participatory budgeting. So I think maybe very few, to answer that question, very few organizations will be towards that one on that journey. And in my current context, we are very close to it.
Thanks, Alhad.
Thanks, Angie.
Are there any other questions or comments for Alhad? Any thoughts?
Okay, looks like audience is too quiet.
All All right. If there are no other comments or questions, Alhad, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights on the changes, both subtle and significant changes in this version. It was really, really very informative, and I certainly learned a lot. So thank you so much. Can I ask that we all unmute ourselves and just give Alhad a round of applause?
Thank you, Swezi, for having me here. And yeah, thank you for being part of it. Thank you.
And thank you so much for our attendees. We really appreciate your attendance and taking out of the time in your personal lives. Thank you so much it's lovely to see our regulars. We really appreciate your continuous attendance. And we hope to see you in our June meetup, which is on the 24th of June. Please stay tuned on the meetup to get the updates on the topic. But really, thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice time. Bye.
Hey.